In 1777, the British defeat at the Battle of Saratoga marked a pivotal shift in the dynamics of the American Revolutionary War. The Saratoga campaign proved to be a turning point. It convinced France that the American colonies had a viable chance at defeating Britain. Consequently, France formally entered the war in support of the American cause, soon followed by Spain. The involvement of these European powers made what had been a colonial rebellion into a global conflict, stretching British military resources thin and opening new fronts in Europe, the Caribbean, and beyond. With the war in the northern colonies reaching a stalemate, the British High Command re-evaluated their strategy. Seeking new momentum, they turned once more to their southern strategy. A renewed campaign focused on the southern colonies. The plan was ambitious. British regular forces would move into the south and link up with loyalist militias, creating a formidable alliance that would sweep northward through Georgia and eventually into Virginia. British commanders believed that regaining the southern colonies would not only restore crucial economic resources, but also break the morale of the rebellion by demonstrating the futility of resistance. In May 1778, Sir Henry Clinton launched a siege against Charleston. After nearly 6 weeks of sustained pressure, Major General Benjamin Lincoln, who led the American garrison, surrendered to the British. This marked one of the most devastating defeats for the American forces in the Revolutionary War up to that time. British forces subsequently turned their attention to the South Carolina backcountry, launching a campaign to secure control over the region. The Battle of Waxhaws in late May 1780 resulted in an overwhelming British victory, and British confidence in their southern strategy grew. On the 5th of June 1780, Sir Henry Clinton departed for New York, believing the South was nearly secured. Before leaving, he delegated command to Lord Cornwallis, assigning him the task of pacifying the remaining rebellious areas of the state and solidifying British dominance throughout the southern colonies. The remaining Patriot resistance in South Carolina was made up of militia forces. General Washington dispatched Continental Army regiments from the Maryland and Delaware lines under the temporary command of Major General Jean Baron de Kalb. They left New Jersey on April 16th and reached Buffalo Ford on the Deep River, about 30 miles south of Greensboro, by July. The American troops camped nearby, and soon after, Horatio Gates, celebrated as the hero of Saratoga, arrived at the camp on July 25th to assume command. Just 2 days later, he ordered his troops to march directly toward Camden, despite strong objections from his officers, including Otho Holland Williams. Williams observed that the terrain was naturally barren and that the troops had been facing food shortages since their arrival at the Deep River. On August 7th, Gates's forces were reinforced by 2,100 North Carolina militiamen under General Richard Caswell. Shortly afterward, 700 Virginia militiamen led by General Edward Stevens joined them about 15 miles north of Camden. With these additions, the American army swelled to nearly 4,000 men and was supported by 8 artillery pieces. General Cornwallis, who was alerted to Gates's movement, marched from Charleston to Camden on August 13th with a force of 2,300 men. Gates formed up before first light. On his left flank, he placed Caswell's 1,800 North Carolina militia. To the left of them were Stephen's 700 Virginians, and behind the Virginians were 120 men of Armand's legion. Gates and his staff remained with the reserve force. In total, there were 900 Continental soldiers on the field. Gates deployed 7 cannons along the front. Additionally, about 70 mounted South Carolina volunteers were present. Cornwallis commanded a force of approximately 2,300 men. Among his troops was the seasoned and highly effective Tarleton's Legion, known for their prowess in pursuing retreating enemies. He organized his army into 2 brigades. On the right, Lieutenant Colonel James Webster led the 23rd Royal Welch Fusiliers and the 33rd Regiment of Foot. On the left, Lord Rawdon held command. In reserve, Cornwallis positioned 2 battalions of the 71st Regiment of Foot along with Tarleton's cavalry. The 800-strong British 33rd Fusiliers advanced with bayonets towards the 2,500 soldiers in the Virginia and North Carolina militia. The American left wing immediately collapsed as the Virginians and then the North Carolinians fled. Rawdon's troops advanced in 2 charges, but heavy fire repulsed his regiments. The Continental troops then launched a counterattack, which came close to breaking Rawdon's line, which began to falter. Cornwallis rode to his left flank and steadied Rawdon's men. Webster and his men moved to the left of the Americans, cutting them off from the side. With the British closing in on 3 sides, Cornwallis ordered Tarleton's cavalry to charge into the rear of the Continental line. The cavalry charge broke up the formation of the Continental troops, who finally broke and fled. Tarleton's cavalry pursued and harried the retreating Continental troops for some 22 miles before drawing rein. After just 1 hour of combat, the American troops had been utterly defeated, suffering over 1,000 casualties. The British also took about 1,000 prisoners, many of whom wounded. The British casualties were 68 killed, 245 wounded, and 11 missing. General Gates, who had been widely celebrated for his earlier successes, fled the battlefield and retreated hundreds of miles to North Carolina, tarnishing his reputation and effectively ending his military career. The defeat at Camden underscored the dangers of relying heavily on untrained militia forces in conventional battles and demonstrated the effectiveness of British regulars in coordinated engagements. Despite the setback, the loss at Camden ultimately led to positive changes for the American cause. The Continental Congress soon replaced Gates with General Nathaniel Greene, a more capable and strategic leader. Greene adopted a more flexible and guerrilla-based approach to warfare, coordinating with local militias and using hit-and-run tactics to weaken British forces. This shift in strategy contributed to the eventual American resurgence in the South and the ultimate defeat of the British at Yorktown in 1781.